how to make a lovely gingerbread greenhouse complete with Christmas trees.
Let's see what's cooking, let's get the facts. Let's see what's cooking, it's time for Yo-Yo Max 12.
Hello everyone. Now of course you need some gingerbread for this. Now the recipe you're watching right now on your screen is one I've used before. It's the same recipe I used to make my gingerbread log cabin. And there'll be a link in the description if you want to check out that video, and also up on your screen right now. Now I'm making a double batch on your screen. I made quite a bit because I wasn't sure how much I was going to need, but I ended up only needing one batch of gingerbread, this particular recipe, to do this greenhouse at this size. So I started off with my mixer, mixing all the wet ingredients. And when I started adding the spices and the flour, I realized that this was not going to fit in this KitchenAid bowl. So I ended up having to switch to a large mixing bowl to get the last of the flour in. So right now I have a whole batch of gingerbread in a bag in the freezer for making gingerbread another day. This recipe is actually pretty easy to work with. Once you're done your gingerbread dough, I would wrap it in plastic wrap or put it in a covered bowl and put it in the refrigerator and let it chill for a couple of hours before you work with it next. I found this particular greenhouse or one similar to it on Pinterest. However, the link to the website, which is Chef Club, the link to the actual templates was broken. You couldn't find the templates. My husband actually made a little mock-up of the greenhouse in paper for me, which was awesome of him. Thank you, hubby. And I cut it up into pieces. So here are the template pieces you'll need. There'll be a link to these templates in the description box of this video. Now what I did is I enlarged each of these pieces to 150% on my scanner copier to get the pieces for my gingerbread. Now when you enlarge these 150%, they may not fit onto an 8.5 by 11 sheet, which is what the paper that my printer uses. So I cut my templates in half. Some of the templates are cut in half, so you have to enlarge them, print them out, and then stick them back together with some tape. And I print these out on cardstock, so it's a little bit more solid. I'm also going to include a link to the larger pieces that are already enlarged to 150%. Now you'll take your gingerbread and you're going to flatten it out. You can roll it up between pieces of parchment or waxed paper. And I found that this, you could roll it not too badly with just a rolling pin. It would stick a little bit, but not that often. Now, this was a learning curve for me here. You put the paper down on here, and I proceeded to cut it out. Now, this particular one, you can see the peak of the roof was cut off when I enlarged it, but it's very easy to recreate when you're cutting your pieces out. And so I cut my pieces out, and then I learned a valuable lesson here when I decided to try to pull the paper off. Paper sticks quite nicely to gingerbread, and it ripped my gingerbread, as you can see here. And I remember this happening before, but I guess my memory wasn't that good because I didn't remember that I had to grease the paper. So you spray it very well with cooking spray. And if you're using cardstock, it'll be fine. It doesn't get soggy. So I sprayed it very well with cooking spray and then cut out my pieces. And I write right on the template how many of them that you need. And then you just remove the excess pieces. Save those, of course, because you're going to re-roll them for other pieces. And you can see it looks a little bit wet. That's the cooking spray. So I just took some paper towel and I just lightly dabbed it. But this is going to be the bottom of the piece anyway, the part that you're not going to see. So it's not so bad. Now to get these onto a cookie sheet, all I do is you leave it right on the piece of wax paper or parchment and then just very gently kind of put it on your cookie sheet the way you want it and then just peel it off. And you're going to bake these at 350 degrees for about 10 to 12 minutes until they look like they're set, they're puffed up, and they're just lightly brown around the edges. Take it out of the oven, and while it's still hot, put your template piece back on, take a sharp knife and just cut out the pieces that have spread and that are no longer straight. Now this is a bit of a challenge because it is hot on your fingers, but it really makes the edges nice and crisp and it gives you the same size that you had before. So just do that while they're still hot. If it gets too hard to cut, you can put it back in the oven, heat it up a little bit, and continue to cut. Once you're done cutting it out again, put it back in the oven for at least another maybe 6 or 7 minutes. You want it to be a golden brown and you want it to be nice and crisp. And you'll get a bunch of little gingerbread slivers that you can enjoy. You can snack on those while you're making the rest of your project. Now, a note here about what I'm wearing here. Now, you'll notice that I'm wearing a shirt and it's got gingerbread on the front of it. I don't wear aprons in my kitchen. What I have is a bunch of what I call my cooking shirts. They're shirts that I wear when I'm cooking and I don't care if they get stained or dirty or so on. Instead of aprons. I don't like aprons. There's a little useless fact for you from Yo-Yo Max 12. I've recently started filming with my iPhone and it has a very wide angle lens, so it catches things that my other camera didn't, like how dirty my shirt is, so I apologize for that. So you can do that with all your pieces, and then I put these on a cookie rack and just let them cool completely. Now we're going to make the royale icing or frosting. Is going to be the glue that we're going to glue all our things together with. So that's 4 cups of powdered sugar, half a cup of meringue powder, and about 1/4 cup of warm water to start. And you're going to add little bits of water as you beat this to get the right texture. Now you want something, so if you pull those beaters up, it's going to make like stiff peaks. You don't want it to be too runny because it's going to run all over the place and it won't hold your pieces together. But you don't want it too stiff because you want it to make sure it sticks to your gingerbread. Now for the windows, this is what absolutely intrigued me about this particular gingerbread house when I saw it, where the windows, these are gelatin sheets. Now you can buy gelatin in powdered form, which is what I'm used to, or these gelatin sheets. We don't have these where I live, at least in my town anyway, so I ordered them on Amazon. And what's great about them is that they're perfectly clear and they have this little diamond pattern in them that makes it look like old-fashioned windows, and they cut beautifully with just a pair of scissors. So you're going to cut pieces to fit all your windows, and then all you have to do is take some frosting, go around each window, and then just gently place your gelatin sheet on top of it and press down all the way around to make sure it sticks nicely. Be fairly generous with your frosting because you want to make sure that these stick. There's a tendency for them to want to detach a little bit once that frosting is really dry. So you may get some edges you might have to re-glue after it's dry. Just check them before you put the pieces together. And there is a completed piece, and when you turn it around, look how nice that looks. I just love the look of it, and they're just so perfectly clear. Now a note here about your size of the windows. Make sure that when you decide on the size of gingerbread house you want, make sure that the windows aren't any bigger than the gelatin sheets that you're using. If I had picked any windows even just a little bit wider, I wouldn't have been able to use these gelatin sheets because they wouldn't have been wide enough. Because you really want 1 sheet of gelatin per window. You don't want to have to put 2 pieces because you're going to have a seam and it's not going to look as nice. So keep that in mind when you're choosing the size. Now for the little Christmas trees, I'm tinting some of that royale frosting with some green paste food coloring. I put it in a Ziploc bag with just a star tip. And then I'm going to use these ice cream cones for the base of the little Christmas trees that I'm making. So I just use a little star tip to pipe on little branches onto the cone. And it's very simple to do. I started off making like kind of lines and rows, but I didn't like how it looked. I kind of like more like a random. So then I just kind of started sticking them all over. And at some point, you're not going to be able to hold on to this anymore without getting your fingers full of frosting. So I recommend that you put it down, frost it on sitting on top of a piece of wax paper, or leave a little edge along the bottom without any frosting. So what I did is I frosted it as much as I could to keep my fingers clean, and then I put it on the piece of wax paper, and I finished piping it that way. Now, I recommend that you just get a little tiny piece of wax paper that just fits the Christmas tree and put it on that. It's a little bit easier to work with. And then you can kind of slide them around on your counter to let them dry afterwards. Put them in a safe spot. Once you pipe on all the frosting, then you're going to add your decorations. And of course, you can do whatever you like. That is completely up to you. I ended up actually doing 4 different decorated Christmas trees for mine. This one is, I call it my little Grinch tree because it looked like a Doctor Who tree and it had a heart sprinkle actually that I put on it for like the Grinch's heart. And then you let these dry completely overnight and they'll actually be fairly firm. You'll be able to pick them up without worrying about it. Now for the assembly. So once everything is nice and dry, your windows are solidly affixed, you're going to start to assemble. Take the back piece, the back window piece. Going to put 2 seams of royal frosting, and then you're going to add the end pieces. Start off with one of them, of course. Now you're going to prop them up, and to keep these from falling down, I'm going to use these cans of vegetables. I got some cans of veggies and soup here that I'm going to use to help prop up my pieces so that they stay nice and straight, and it allows them to harden in the right position. This is a bit fiddly, but make sure that your angles are good. You want to make sure that the angles are good because you're not going to be able to move them around after they're dry. So I did the back piece, I did the 2 end pieces, and then I decided to add the back roof piece, which I'm going to do right here. Yes, make sure everything is nice and straight, and things move around quite easily, so just keep making sure everything is where it's supposed to be. I changed shirts because I realized I was going to be partially in the shot, so I put on a nice clean shirt for you. Now we're going to add the back roof piece here in this particular session. And of course you get my lovely light stand in the back there with the gray duct tape holding it all together because it's broken. High-tech Yodium X12 production here. They add the back roof piece and it fit quite well. I just kind of pressed and held it until it stuck, and it stuck quite nicely. Then I added these 2 front pieces, which I didn't film, and I let this sit overnight and let it dry. Now we're going to add a floor to this greenhouse. Now I'm using graham cracker crumbs. That's what they did on the Pinterest pin video. I like the look of it because it does look kind of like a sand floor, because most greenhouses have a natural dirt floor to them. I think they would also look nice with a graham wafer crackers cut to size to fit. I think that would also look nice. Now, I really do recommend you add lights. I found these little tiny mini LED light strands on Amazon. I think it was like $12 for like 2 of these particular battery powered, and they're very, very bright. They come in a long string. Now, I originally intended on trying to put them on the inside walls of the greenhouse, like to put them up inside, like around the windows and that. But there's no way that I could have done that with this frosting and with this wire. It would not have worked out. I couldn't see a possible way of doing it. So I did kind of what they did on the Chef Club website, was I kind of just put them on the bottom of the greenhouse. So I just kind of formed the wire into a rough rectangle shape and then just got it to fit near the bottom of the greenhouse. Now this greenhouse is going to be all sealed up. So you're going to make sure that the end of the wire is outside of the greenhouse to where the little switch is to turn it on and off, where the battery pack is. So I had to kind of put it underneath the greenhouse. I had to lift it a little bit. And when I did lift it, you can see that front panel moved a bit, and it actually loosened enough that it actually fell off. And luckily I caught it before it hit the floor, because I would have not been a happy camper. So I just put more frosting on it and stuck it back on. And then it's time to put in your little Christmas trees. Now I put them in here. You can see I have different colors and I use different kind of little sprinkles and different candies on them for different kinds of trees. Make sure that they're in a position that you like, because you're not going to be able to move them once they're in there, because your greenhouse will be sealed in. There won't be a way to reach in to move things around. If you're going to move this greenhouse around your house or from place to place, I would recommend you glue those trees down with some frosting so that they don't budge. I didn't glue mine. I just set them down because it was not going to be moved very far in my house, so I wasn't worried about them slipping and sliding. Now, the problem I was having is, see how that sand or the graham cracker crumbs started to come out through the crack at the bottom, and I'll talk about that later. And now we're going to finish it off. So we're going to add the front part of the roof. There's the front of the roof with that V shape. And that set on quite nicely. If you get any gaps in the edges, you can fill all that in with royal frosting afterwards, so don't worry about it. Then I added the 2 front panels. Of course, using cans to hold these in place. And then I added the front. And at this point, what I did was I let this sit for about 3 hours drying before I added the final 2 pieces, just to make sure. I added some more graham cracker crumbs to the front part, make sure that part of the floor was covered. And now it's time for the final 2 pieces. So we're going to just add the frosting, the royal icing, glue, and there's 1 piece, and it fit fairly well. And then I grabbed my very final piece and was trying to figure out how it was going to fit. And then I realized it isn't going to fit because I made 2 of the same. I made 2 exact pieces, and you actually need a right and a left piece. So I had to peel the window off. I had to scrape the frosting off with a knife and then put the window back on. So one of those pieces, this one here I'm holding, that one actually has the bottom side of the cookie rather than the top showing, but it's okay, worked out all right. The template that's going to be in the description box below, the link to it, that will have a left and a right of the front part of that roof. So you won't have to worry about that. And then you decorate it the way you want. Now I decided, because I had to use frosting, quite a bit of frosting to hide gaps on the peak of the roof and on the top edges, I decided to do all the seams with the frosting using little round dollops to make it look like snow. I probably could have been a little bit slower. It would have been a little bit more exact because it wasn't super pretty. Anyway, here it is. And initially I decided not to put frosting along the bottom of the house, but you'll see I actually add some later. I find it looks better with the frosting on the bottom. See how you can see the sand or the graham cracker crumbs? They kind of tendency to want to come out a little bit. So what I decided to do is just add a bead along the bottom. Anyway, here it is. I was so happy with the way this turned out. Now you can decorate, add whatever other kind of decorations you want with this. But you know what? I thought something simple like this, just simple, was best. What do you think? And here it is a little bit later in the day, and lights are off in the kitchen. And I just love how that light looks like inside this thing. Now you can see I added the bottom edge all the way around. This actually keeps those graham cracker crumbs from coming out, and it also glues it nicely to your cake board, so you're not worried about it sliding around when you're moving it. So I recommend that you do glue it down like this. I just love the way those Christmas trees look through those little panes of glass with those lights. I just find it just magical. And then a close-up view of the windows with the little trees inside. Now this project takes about 3 days. Plan for 1 day for the actual gingerbread pieces to make the gingerbread and bake the pieces. And another day for half of the assembly. Let that dry overnight and then do the second part of the assembly. Plan for 3 days, and that way you're not rushing, and then it's going to save you a lot of grief, because if you try to assemble it too quickly without letting the pieces dry, you're going to end up with a disaster. Trust me, been there, done that. Now here's a picture at night in my house when the house is lit up, and you can see what the light does. It actually puts a diamond pattern through the windows onto the wall and the ceiling. So that's pretty cool. Merry Christmas to all my viewers. Thank you for making it to the end of this really long video. I have a playlist of other gingerbread houses. I really enjoy making these. If you want to see them, check it out. Thanks so much for watching.